What a wild weekend of AFL action. Round 10 was absolutely unbelievable. What about Sunday? Thought, don't need to watch these games. There's going to be nothing positive or nothing exciting happening here. And we had two of the great games of the season, Hawthorn and Port Adelaide. What about that? The Hawks not won. They should have. The Hawks led for 121 minutes. Fancy leading a game of footy for 121 minutes, more than 2 hours, and not winning the game. The Power kicked a couple inside the last minute to absolutely steal that one from Hawks fans. And I'll tell you what, they took it tough, the Hawks fans. It started off way back when, round 10, with the Gold Coast and the Cats up in the top end. And what about the performance from Gold Coast? The Cats left a few at home, a few aging stars didn't travel north, and they got it right between the eyes. 164 points put up by Gold Coast. The Cats scored 100. And if you had have told them before the game you can have 100 points, would you take it? I reckon they would have taken it. No Cameron, no Hawkins, no Duncan. Couple of late withdrawals as well, or Sam de Koning was a late withdrawal with a little hamstring issue, and they get 100 and they get beaten by 64 points. Footy at the moment is absolutely crazy. The Suns mids went absolutely ham. And if you don't know what ham means, look it up. The Blues kicked a few early in that game, 4-1 from memory, or they got up by around 4 goals. And then the Swannies went absolutely bonkers. Chad Warner, Errol Goulden, and Izak Rankine were chief destroyers in what was a dazzling display from the Swans after overcoming that 4-goal deficit. And this week on the 7AFL socials, I've had a bit of fun. So less insightful. We've been trying to break down stoppages and ball movement and individual players and their roles. This week, it's a bit of fun. So Sydney have 3 midfielders who are out-and-out superstars. Errol Goulden on the wing. He sort of goes wing, inside mid, back to the wing. Izak Rankine, who's been so dangerous and damaging as a midfielder this season. He was good as a forward against Carlton. And Chad Warner, who I think played the best individual game we've seen this year, 28 disposals and 3 goals. I'm asking you, I did it on the Channel 7 AFL socials on Instagram and Twitter. Make sure you check it out. But I'll ask you here again. Who are you taking first, second, and third? You're spoiled for choice, and there's really no wrong answer. But 1, 2, 3, who are you taking? I went with Heaney at 1, Goulden at 2, and Warner at 3, despite how good that game was from Chad Warner. Warner is so damaging and dangerous from stoppage. Heaney and Goulden, I love the way Goulden just runs and guns. He works his tail off up and down the wing. He's a prodigious and prolific ball winner, and he's a great kick as well. So jump on the 7AFL socials, have a look at the video, and let me know. The Pies and the Crows played an absolute thriller again. Who'd have thought these two teams would start a rivalry like this? The last 3 games have been decided by 1 point, 2 points, and 4 points. And the weekend's match, of course, was clouded and scattered in controversy. I'll have my say on that in a moment. Izak Rankine, did he run too far? Should that decision have been called at that stage of the game? I'll have my say in a moment. Brisbane hammered Richmond. They are absolutely in a world of pain, the Tigers. I mentioned Port stealing victory from the jaws of defeat. I worked the St Kilda and Freo game. That was an absolute snooze fest. And I'll get to the Saints soon and the coach and his methods as well. What I also want to have a look at for the weekend, or from the weekend, the Eagles, how good were they at home? They're no walkovers. They're no easy beats anywhere anymore. They beat a premiership aspirant in the Ds. Harley Reid was superb. Jake Waterman is the most improved player in the competition. Speaking of, I think they should have an award for the most improved player in the competition. He would be $1.01 at the moment. Now, a couple of topics I want to talk about across the weekend. Let's start with the Izak Rankine. Did he or did he not run too far? Should that or should that have not been called by the umpire? The Fox Lab, whether it's correct or not, I don't know, says 24.2 metres. That's the official number, or the unofficially official number from the Fox Lab. When I was watching it live, like most of us, and I've watched the replay a few times, knowing that it gets called, knowing that he pushes the envelope, it doesn't feel like one that needs to be called in that moment. Now, I've heard and read, because Twitter has absolutely blown up about it, I've read the commentary or the opinion around umpires need to adjudicate to the laws, not to the state of the game. But haven't we been doing that forever? Haven't we always asked umpires to swallow their whistle late in games, to let the players decide? You get away with more late in games. You get away with more in finals. You always have across various different sports. Look at the NBA playoffs at the moment versus the NBA regular season. It's almost assault, bodily harm, the defense and the physicality in the NBA versus the regular season. And that's what we've asked for. You know, deep in a quarter, deep in a game, late in the fourth quarter. Don't let the umpires determine the outcome of the game. And you may say, well, by not calling it, that is determining the outcome of the game or having an impact in the game. But when's the last time we saw an umpire need to step in and make a call like that for running too far? It would be, correct me if I'm wrong, it would be among the one or two laws of the game that are involved in the game the least. Surely, what else happens? We see more 50-metre penalties than we see players having run too far. And then, of course, having seen Rankine ping for it, we see 2 or 3 more across the weekend, and it becomes a bit of a joke. My personal view, and you can have yours, and most of us had or have. I just don't think you need to intervene and blow the whistle and halt the momentum of the game in that situation. There wasn't an outrageous advantage gained by Rankine. He didn't run 45 metres. He didn't run 35 metres. Players run out of the square from full back and run further than he did all the time, regularly. Maybe the Fox Lab can go and map that stuff up. So I don't think he should have been pinged. I think that play should have been allowed to go on. I completely disagree with Graham Corns' absolute nonsense, absolute tripe about it not being called if it were a Collingwood player. The Victoria bias, the media bias, having lived in Adelaide, I thought this at the time, I think it now, the South Australians and somewhat the West Australians need to get over the fact that they think there's Melbourne bias, Victoria bias. There's not. There just happens to be more teams, more clubs, and more news in this part of the world. Adelaide people and Adelaide broadcasters will spend 99% of their time all week talking about the Izak Rankine situation. They'll completely ignore every other team. Trust me, I've lived it. It gets a little dull after a while. But the bias stuff, you can just leave me out. Now, what about bias? Because I used to play for the Crows. I've got no Crow in me. It made no difference to me who won that game or not. It doesn't worry me at all. So I'm not speaking from an angle of personal investment. I don't care about, the outcome of the game. I just think the umpire should not intervene in that situation. Allow that. It's not an egregious advantage. It's not an egregious breaking of the rules, of the laws of the game. Let it go. Would they have scored? Maybe not. And that's what Collingwood fans were saying on Twitter. It's not as if Tex Walker marked it, or it's not as if Adelaide were about to score. We don't know, but we'll never know because the umpire decided to intervene. Now, Richmond. I've kind of got my Richmond jumper on today. Got the local footy club jumper on. The Tigers. I did say, excuse me, in the trade period of last season that Richmond were a chance to finish on the bottom of the ladder. Now, ultimately, I don't think that will happen. They've won a game. They beat Sydney. Blimey, I'm not sure how that happened. And I think they'd beat North if they were to clash over the next few weeks. I'm not sure when they play each other, but I think they'll beat North. And I think they'll beat one or two other teams as they get over the hump and get some players back as well. But the reason I thought they were vulnerable was because when you are going through sustained success over a 5-year period, you are leaning on and into veteran players and stars. And we see Rance and Revolt and Cochin and Castagna and others, Butler, guys come and go or go. They do their thing. They perform well. And we're seeing some of the role players in those premierships exposed, and there's things being asked of them that perhaps they're not capable of. New players being ingratiated or integrated into the team, and injuries. And that was my main point. If Richmond were to get injuries, they could be vulnerable and they could finish on the bottom of the ladder. Now, whether they finish on the bottom or second or third bottom, it doesn't really matter. What matters for them now is to work out which young players can play for them for the next 5 or 10 years, preferably 10, but at least 5 or 6 years. Can Young or Campbell or Miller or Mansell or Samson Ryan, who I'm not sure why he's not playing AFL footy at the moment, can Thompson Dow, can these guys play AFL footy for the next 6, 7, 8 years, for the next 80 to 150 games and help Richmond get up the rankings? That's what they need to find out. Shout out to Sam Naismith, who it looks like, and probably by the time you're watching this or listening to this, you'll know that he's done another ACL. It looked like it. And basically everyone was consigned to the fact that he had done another ACL. It just adds to the carnage at Tigerland. 18 players, I believe, are currently injured at Richmond, and a lot of them are their better players. So there's absolutely no way teams can get through that. I want to ask this question. I don't believe in it. I'm just asking it. Now, Adam Uze has inherited the situation. On the back end of premiership success, Brendan Gale will leave. Damien Hardwick has left. He's inherited some older players who are probably trying to wrap their head around the situation, and some young players who will or will not be able to play AFL footy long term, depending on their ability and their development. Could they try and speed up the process of rebuilding? Because if you want to, then maybe you're looking at moving someone like Tim Taranto or Tom Lynch or Noah Bolter. There might be others. Liam Baker's one I'd keep because I still think he's got 6 years of really good footy in him. And the draft pick or picks that you're going to get back for Liam Baker, who's to say they're going to be any better than Liam Baker for the next 5 or 6 years? And 5 or 6 years, as I mentioned, is a really sustained period of footy. I'd keep Baker. But if you were keen to really super speed this rebuilding phase up or process up, could you look to move Lynch to a premiership contender? Now, I know he's done great things, and the move for him to come to Richmond has been great, and maybe he wouldn't want to, and maybe you wouldn't get much back. But you'd get a lot of salary off the books. You'd get some sort of compensation from a draft perspective. You'd probably be forced to play Samson Ryan or Lafau in the front half and develop those guys. What about Noah Bolter? I know he's not an older player, and he's probably still got plenty of time left in him as well. But could you turn him into 2 young players who may be able to help drive you forward as well? What about Tim Taranto? This would be really out there and really left field. He won the BNF in his first season, and I love Tim Taranto. I'm absolutely a big fan of Tim Taranto. I'll defend him as much as I possibly can. I love the way he gets after the footy. And as I said at the start of this little ramble, I wouldn't make this move. But if you wanted to speed it up and you wanted to get more picks in the door, could you move Taranto or Hopper and get some picks back? Again, get some salary off your books and maybe try and land a different type of free agent. I don't know, and I doubt they will. But if Uze's got a point of view and a new CEO's got a point of view and the club wants to get younger and younger and try and get more picks in the door, maybe you have to get a bit left field and make a move like that. We'll find out. Ross Lyon and his Saints. Ross, it is time for change. Yes, I've heard him say we're endeavouring to move the ball faster and play with more sizzle, quote unquote, from him. But I watched them play live against Fremantle, who are not the second coming of the greatest offensive juggernaut of all time, the Geelong of 2007. They're not an offensive juggernaut, Fremantle. But Fremantle set up to give their offense a chance. St Kilda set up to defend. That's the difference in the game. And yes, I understand you want to be stable behind the ball and you don't want to cough up and concede easy goals. And this is a little more philosophical than it is a shot at Ross. But AFL coaches, generally speaking, I'd say 15 or 16 of them would rather save a goal, stop a goal, than score a goal. Now, philosophically speaking, that's not good for us as fans. But I watched the two teams set up behind the ball, behind a stoppage. And if you want to imagine the stoppage anywhere between the arcs, let's just say it's on centre wing. Jordan Clark from Fremantle was playing half back and he was coming up. So both teams had a spare off the back of the contest. So Clark was spare for Fremantle. He was getting up high around the contest, around the back of the contest, looking for handball receives, cutting back through the middle, through the corridor, and being able to move the ball at speed. So Sarong and Brayshaw and Jackson, they were feeding it back to Clark, knowing he was there, and they were off to the races. St Kilda was setting up from the same stoppage with Wilkie 90 metres from the ball. That's just a mindset of we're going to protect our defenders, we're going to protect our defence, and we're going to be hard to score against. And that's fine. But equally, don't expect to be able to score, particularly when you don't have a potent forward line. So you might protect your back half with Wilkie as the deepest defender, as the goalkeeper, if you will. If you've got a really potent forward line who can get it done one-on-one, or who can get it done maybe even outnumbered. But they don't have that. I just thought there was an opportunity. Put Wilkie on a man. Put Dougal Howard on a man. The Fremantle tall forwards weren't tearing the game up. They were having shots at goal. Jai Amos kicked 2 goals, 5. He was dangerous, but he wasn't hurting them. Put Wilkie on Amos. Put Dougal Howard on Tracy. And put Wanganeen Millera in the same position that Clark is from St Kilda's point of view. Put him 2 metres off the back of the stoppage. Allow him to run and gun through the corridor. Allow Sinclair to be in that position. And then all of a sudden, you might be able to score. You move the ball quickly from a stoppage win versus having to defend and move the ball 100, 120 metres because they're not capable. Even their good ball users at St Kilda straight away look to go lateral. They look to go backwards. They'll give up ground. They go from one pocket to the other and be unable to move the footy. And that, to me, is a coaching game style issue. That's Ross's issue. He's got to be willing to be more risky, to give up a goal to score a goal. And back in the fact that you might give up 3, but you'll get 5. And that's what the good teams, I think, are willing to do. Look at Nick Blakey off halfback for the Swans. That's John Longmire, who I think in his heart of hearts probably says to himself, I wish he wasn't so risky, but I understand the modern game. If we don't take risks, we won't score. And you need to score to win games. You need to score 100 points to win games of footy. Let's have a look at some of the numbers from St Kilda. And I pinched a few of these from Twitter. Rowan Connolly was all over it. There's some other stuff on AFL.com.au and some stuff I looked up of my own accord, believe it or not. Only North Melbourne, Richmond and Hawthorn average less goals per game. Only 3 clubs average less goals per game. Some of their recent scores in their losses, they've lost 7 games, this year. They've scored 68, 67, 79, 64, 72, 53, and 55. Those scores, again, in their past 2, 53 and 55. Just 102 points scored in the past fortnight against Fremantle and Hawthorn. Hardly world beaters. Last year, the Saints were number 1 for not conceding scores, but 15th for scoring. This year, they're still okay. They're still in the top half for scores allowed, which is good, but they're only 14th again for scoring. And across Ross Lyon's coaching tenure, he's never had a team in the top 4 for offense, for attack, for scoring. Never had a top 4 team when it comes to scoring. And recent history, as I said, demands that you be powerful in all 3 phases of the game. You've got to be powerful in contest, on the ground and in the air. You've got to be strong and stable behind the ball, but you also need to have flair and dare and dash and boldness and courage when you've got the ball in your hands. And at the moment, through system and through setup, St Kilda haven't got any potency when they get the ball in their hands. So the game's up for Ross. He needs to less talk about what they want to do and more action, because some people can see what happens during the game, and they can see Wilkie set up as a goalkeeper 150 metres away from the contest. And I can see Jordan Clark, an attacking weapon off halfback, set up, ready to be potent and ready to give the forwards great opportunity to score the footy. And you look at some of the good teams. Have a look at where Sydney set up and what they do with their best players. They've always been a team, the Swans, having played against them a lot, who are willing to defend and defend hard. But now they've evolved because they've got Warner and Goulden and Blakey and Heaney. They've evolved into a team who are willing to take the game on. They're willing to give up 3 goals, providing that they set themselves up and give themselves a chance to kick 5. That's my view on the Saints. I know it's fairly harsh. I don't usually go that deeply into, I guess, one team's problemos, but I watched them closely on Saturday night. It was hard to watch, but anyway, I watched it and I copped it, and that's what I thought of St Kilda's offense. Let me know what you think. Saints fans are up and about, not in a good way. Make sure you check out the 7 AFL socials this week. Again, I had some fun with Goulden, Heaney and Warner, and which player I'd take first, second, or third. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. Dropped a little NBA pod as well. So those who listen to this show versus watch it, make sure you check out that NBA Conference Finals preview pod as well. We're getting to the absolute meaty, pointy end of the NBA playoffs. We've got Dallas and Minnesota going at it. Luka Doncic and Anthony Edwards, of course. And then on the other side of the country, the East Coast, we've got Boston going head-to-head with the Indiana Pacers. So looking forward to that. Make sure you check that out. In the words of the great Pat McAfee, be a friend and tell a friend. I'm out. I'll chat again to you next week. Thanks for watching The Field.